Hey, Michael. Thanks for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me. My name's Michael. I'm a senior at Georgetown. I study econ and physics. And over the past year, I've had the privilege of serving as the CEO of Georgetown Ventures, which is the student-run startup accelerator at Georgetown. Outside of school, I've worked for a few early and growth stage startups. I also play club soccer at Georgetown and do classical music.
Awesome. Excited to chat with you today about Georgetown Ventures. Kind of curious, like, how did you first learn about that club on campus?
Yeah, so it's funny because my freshman year was COVID, which means that we were kind of all off campus that first year and didn't really learn about student groups until we returned as sophomores. But kind of by chance, just because I wanted to get some experience, I ended up interning for a startup in DC my entire freshman year. And so when I got to campus, I kind of just heard about GV through some friends and back to school programming. Thought it sounded interesting because I really loved the experience I had at the startup. And so I applied. But yeah, I mean, it's important to note too, Georgetown has kind of a good culture that revolves around student groups. So GV is only about like 6 years old. So really, compared to some of like the legacy groups like our credit union and our finance club and all that, it is really does have a short history. So even just in the few years that I've been there, it's changed dramatically. And I'm really super proud of kind of the impact we made in that short history.
Cool. So Georgetown Ventures is a student-led startup accelerator. You mentioned it's been around for 6 years. So started in 2017. To date, you guys have supported around 100 startups, and those companies have gone on to raise $35 million in funding. Is there any other background information that you think is important to know for the audience?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, kind of each semester we operate a 10-week accelerator program where we work with about 8 to 10 of some of the most promising startups found in the Georgetown community. So these startups, they hail from kind of all different corners of Georgetown. So think like undergrad population, grad population, like med school, MBA programs, as well as alumni and even some local veterans. I guess a few like things to emphasize, like we are really truly student run. So for better, for worse, it kind of ends with our leadership team. There's not a lot of faculty oversight. And another thing is that we are like a really labor intensive org. So it's not really just startup consulting in the sense of kind of like making decks and trying to tell the founders what to do. We're really just trying to be that extra 10 set of hands that every founder wishes they had. So each team is getting like 6 to 8 students that are each putting in a few hours a week. As an org, we move like 3,000 hours a semester. And between like kind of our strategic, creative, technical work, each founder is getting like almost $15,000 in value, and it's no strings attached, no equity.
Cool. And can you talk a little bit more about your startup program? So I saw you guys have LaunchPad. You also have Venture Accelerator. Like, what's the difference between those two programs? And yeah, can you give a quick maybe overview?
Yeah, definitely. So those are really just two programs that kind of separate our cohort by stage. And I really think about the distinction as one being kind of cohort led and the other being more project led. So the LaunchPad program is kind of geared to our earlier stage startups. And we kind of take them from 0 to 1. It's a pretty traditional kind of like idea. It's a product launch incubator. And so for them, we're kind of leading them through like a lean startup methodology as a group. And there's kind of that education component. Whereas for the venture accelerator startups, they're a little bit further along in their growth journey. So for them, it is a lot more independent. And so they have slightly larger project teams that are kind of all led by project managers. And so really the big distinction is just kind of that group feel versus kind of that independent feel.
And can you give an overview of like the application process? I saw you guys have like a written application, but what happens after that, and what are you guys looking for when selecting founders to these programs?
Yeah, definitely. So we try to kind of meet as many founders as we can as early as we can. So it really is like an all year round process because the Georgetown startup ecosystem is not really big. So there are kind of a few different channels where we can kind of reach founders. So we really just try to like get to know them, try to talk to them before the application deadline. The application is pretty straightforward. We're just trying to get like a little bit of a better sense of the product and the founding team. It's really just kind of like acts as a supplement for the interview. So that way it's like, hey, you said this, like, let's talk about it. And like, what are the relevant materials to bring there? our app stays open until like the first few weeks of school, like the same as our member app, just kind of accommodate some of the like younger students that might rely on like back to school programming just to hear about these opportunities. But for the most part, we are trying to meet these founders as early as possible. And then what I say, like, we are, when it comes to kind of criteria for working with us, we really are like industry and stage agnostic. For us, like a big thing is like serviceability. So like as a student group, there are things that we can do and things that we can't do. And so even if you have a really brilliant startup idea, if it's just like not a good fit for like what we want to offer, or what we can offer, then usually that doesn't work. So it's really more fit. It's making sure that the founder is really like mission and value driven.
Yeah.
They're kind of ready and willing to work with like student members, and just making sure that that would be a good partnership.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that fit? Like what are things that you can do and want to help with versus like what are things outside of your expertise that you tend to stay away from?
Yeah, sure. So I guess like some of our unique attributes as students is that we're really like flexible, creative, high energy, and so like those things are really really good for customer discovery. For instance, like we'll go bar hopping to go like win clients if we have to, or like anything like that. But for instance, if you're saying like, hey, like I want to like from scratch, I need to like code this like blockchain platform. It's like that's just like an extreme example of something that is not super serviceable for us within the 10-week span. But a lot of other things that we're great at, like kind of involve like just the product design, go to market stuff. Our creative team is really good at building like brand identities for early stage startups. The tech team is good for product development for like MVPs and things like that. But there are definitely some things that would not be, I guess, we wouldn't be able to move the needle on in a significant way in 10 weeks.
Makes sense. And kind of curious, like as you reflect on Georgetown Ventures, like what do you see as like the biggest opportunities to improve just how you support founders?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really exciting because I feel like we're starting to really build a playbook that kind of is working each semester. But I think like a few things, just thinking about it. One would be like alumni engagement. So I think we, like I mentioned, have some unique value adds as being students. Like we're always available and we're creative, but the industry expertise of like alumni is super important to also leverage. And when you kind of bring those two groups together, you create a really, really strong value add for all the startups. I think another thing would be building out a portfolio function. So whether that means investing or not, really just having a way to kind of like track and continue our support for founders is super, super crucial. Because like as it is right now, like obviously I'll always have those relationships with those founders, but like when I graduate, there's no formal way for the founders that graduated like from our cohort this fall to have like continued support. And so I just want to make sure that we have a way to continue advocating. And then I think like last thing is just really just keep investing in tech. That has been a massive value add, and we only launched it in the spring semester, so it's still pretty young. We just kind of created a CTO role, and so really just investing in that, I think, will kind of go a long way for the founders that need it.
And then curious, what percentage of student founders that you guys work with at Georgetown Ventures continue after graduation on their startups?
Yeah. So this question, the answer to this question has changed a lot over like the last few years. I would say like really early on when I first joined the club, it was really low. What I'll say now is that it's exciting that every single startup in our fall cohort had enough traction to continue, and they're all planning to continue for the foreseeable future. Some are like further along than others, so obviously, we got to keep monitoring their progress. But it also has shifted upwards because our cohort now is more largely composed of like alumni and grad students that might already be kind of like committed to working full time.
Yeah.
So that's like a big factor. But it's also really exciting too that we had a founder this semester. He, within like a year of working with us, he raised like a $500K pre-seed round, and now he's taking a leave of absence from school to go pursue it. So I guess like we can officially say we accelerated somebody out of Georgetown. Just cool.
Yeah, that's a cool story. And now wanted to sort of transition to questions to help students who want to join the Georgetown Ventures internal team. Can you give an overview of that application process and what you're looking for when selecting students to the internal team?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, we try to make it as easy as possible for like anyone and everyone to apply that's just interested. The process is really like I mentioned, kind of in the first few weeks of school, we have kind of like a short application, just trying to like gauge your interests and kind of what you want to work on. And then that first round of interviews is everyone's kind of all grouped together. So regardless of the division you're applying to, which I can get into a little bit more later, everyone's just getting like kind of a basic interview. And then the second round would be kind of more tailored to what you're trying to do at GV. So like if you're applying to the tech team, your interview would have like the director of tech, CTO, and it would be kind of tailored to that work. But yeah, in terms of like what we're looking for, I would say, like, as cliche as it is, just like pretty genuine interest. Nobody is expected, and I can't emphasize this enough, nobody's expected to like have startup experience at like 18, 19 years old. That's like not a thing that we look for. And we do have like a pretty strong like education program that teaches people all this stuff. So there really is that really is not a requirement. I think one thing that we benefit from is that like nobody wants to do startups because like they want to be rich or anything like that. So it does kind of stand out when somebody like really loves it. It kind of jumps off the page that somebody's excited. And really like when you get people that are equally passionate about startups and you get like a diversity of perspectives and people all want to work on different things, it makes the accelerator really, really strong because the teams just like bring so much unique value from each of the members, that the founders just feel well supported on like anything that they ask for.
And so students can work on one of 4 teams. So you guys have LaunchPad, Venture Accelerator, and there's also Creative and Tech. Can you just briefly talk about some of the things that they would be doing on those teams?
Yeah, definitely. So I would think about like our services, our divisions kind of like in 3 ways rather. So LaunchPad and Venture Accelerator are those 2 programs, but those are both for students that are kind of working in like our product and strategy capacities. So for them, it's pretty similar work. You're basically trying to do the work of a co-founder without equity. So kind of whatever they wish they were working on but don't have time for, you're going to be helping with that. So for them, it's a lot of customer discovery, product design. They do like go-to-market stuff, financial modeling for some of the growth stage startups. They help make key hires. They help lead fundraising, really anything like that. Then the creative team, their goal is really to leave each of our founders with like a unique brand identity, which is like something that's really difficult early on in the startup because you don't even know where you're going. And so for them, they're really strong in like graphic design. So they're building like really professional grade brand books that have like custom logos, color palettes, even like voicing guidelines, trying to say like, oh, this is like how you should present yourself, which is really important. And then our tech team, every founder really should feel like they have a technical co-founder when they work with us. So these kids are doing like basic product development, they're building landing pages, and they're also, doing other tasks like scraping on Twitter to help with like market research and things like that.
Cool. And can you talk a little bit more about your education program? Like how long do you guys work with students before they actually interact with founders and stuff like that?
Yeah, no. So one thing that we really love is that new members like are on product teams immediately. So the education is happening simultaneously with your first project. So of course, like startups are really just like learning by doing is absolutely essential. So on one hand, they're like immediately on a project in the division of their choice, and they're kind of learning from some of the older students as they go. But then we just have like a kind of like once a week education session just for that first semester, where they're also kind of like just getting a little bit more acclimated to, some of the terms and some of the concepts. So we try to keep it fun. It's not like super evaluative. Like for instance, our director this semester, he keeps it like their outside activities to listen to like the How I Built This podcast. And so like they talk about that. It's just like highlighting case studies and founder stories, and then also teaching them things like business models, and things like that.
Cool. And last question, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to know for either a founder considering Georgetown Ventures or someone who's wants to join the internal team?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess really just that like GV is a super special community. It really is like a home for countless students at Georgetown, including myself. We don't pride ourselves on being exclusive or sending the most kids to Citibank, although we do send a few. But you know, it is really a strong community of students that just love startups, love entrepreneurship. So yeah, as a student that's interested or a founder that's interested, yeah, definitely reach out and go for it, because it's been easily the best thing that I've been a part of at Georgetown.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Appreciate it.